And here we go. We had perfect. Everything was lined up. We were ready to go. And then John's camera went out. I'm sure John will come on in a second, but it's just unbelievable, the timing. He was literally right here. We were in the queue, as they call it, 10 or 15 seconds before we go on. And voila, John jumps out.
Yeah.
Well, Jared,
I heard his audio going out just as I was counting you.
Oh man.
in.
Well, just as we have to, we'll move along a little bit. You're hearing Jared. You most likely aren't going to see Jared, is my guess. But Jared, I'll tell you what, we have a pretty interesting market. Not a whole lot of movement today. Nothing that's really scaring anybody one direction or the other. The NASDAQ actually had a nice turn and burn to the upside recently, but we also have a really nice move to the downside, 50 points. We'll take it, because we got to show you something, right, Jared? What do we got, man? I mean, it's a little bearish out there. Oh, baby. If you don't know what that is that just went zipping on by, that is a bear going on, a snowboard or something like that, Jared?
Yeah. It's a snowboarding bear.
Oh, man, that's classic.
When I started working here a couple of years ago, I was hoping I'd get John in a bear suit going down a mountain. On camera, for real.
And can I tell you, that ain't far away from something he would do. He'd throw on that bear suit. He'd go out there. He's not a bear, though. He's not like 90% of traders on the trading floor are bearish. For the people who don't know how that world really thinks and looks at things, they're all bears. God, those guys were bears when I got to the markets back in the early 1990s, Jared. And everybody was telling me when we were at 3,000 on the Dow, they go, God, this thing's in la-la land. This thing's going back down. Well, then it was 10,000. Then it was 15. Now here we are, well over 30,000. So pretty interesting stuff. I think John's going to jump into with us in just a second. And when he does, we're going to hit the macro minute. I'll start it off with the macro minute, and then I'll let John jump in. What does my macro minute start off? Well, it's about the dollar. Keep an eye on the dollar, folks. I think it's macro. It's not something I really love talking about, but I will say this. When the dollar starts getting over 103, 104, today it got over 104.30. It starts making that move to the upside. It did pull off, but keep an eye on the dollar. I think that's something that's very important as far as a tell about the big, broader parts of the market. How about you, John? I see you there.
Yeah, well, thank you, Pete. It seemed like I'm not going to clap my hands again because that seemed to have an effect on the computer. But I'm out here at the LD Micro conference, and there are like 350 companies that are presenting here. Most of them micro cap, which these days means under $1 billion. And a lot of really interesting people that are attending to listen to this, Pete, just like the Roth conference in California. And this one's right here in LA on Sunset Strip at the Lux Hotel. Pretty packed event. But anyway, so to your point, yeah, macro minute, I think it's okay. So we've solved the problem that they created themselves by not addressing the debt and instead just kicking it out another couple of years. So they solved that, Pete. Pretty surprising.
Shocker.
And that's it for the macro minute. Bang.
That's all it needs.
Let's hit fantastic futures because
fantastic futures.
Fantastic. The frozen concentrated orange juice. So this is the one that the guys were in trading places getting unusual activity in from Mr. Beeks. Well, frozen concentrated orange juice, Pete, is actually down. This is one of those soft commodities that we've been tracking, and it was having a fairly big 3% move today. So that is my fantastic future.
My fantastic future is going to be a mirror of yesterday, John, and here's why. I wanted to take a look at crude once again because what crude is doing and the movements, John, that we've had in there have been pretty extraordinary when you consider what it is that we're talking about, the size, the sheer size. I'll even add a little nat gas. Nat gas, by the way, year to date is down 45%. Crude is down 10% year to date. So, it's just something I think you want to keep an eye on as you're talking about different things of futures and how they're trading and everything else. I'll tell you what, no matter what OPEC does now, John, it doesn't seem to last very long in terms of the price of crude. And that's got to be getting frustrated for them. We'll be talking about the Saudis a little later on as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, we always love fantastic futures, folks, because futures, there's so many of them, and they move so violently, some of them. And Pete's on the energy trade again here. I'm going to jump right over to Coinbase, Pete, because the poser that is this SEC chairman, even though, keep in mind that Coinbase had to have all of this that they're being charged with, they had to have all of this in their offering documents because they're a publicly traded company. But now the chairman is saying, well, you know what? You have 5 stakeable assets. Stakeable, folks, meaning you put up the asset and you earn money back for putting that asset up on Coinbase. And Bitcoin falls on this news that the SEC chair is charging the crypto broker with violating securities law going back years. And it's not just Bitcoin that's back down under 26,000, Pete. It's Coinbase that traded all the way down to $46 a share. But if you take a look, luckily the smart guys over at, and gals at Market Rebellion had the unusual activity yesterday. What were they buying? They were buying the Coinbase 50 puts that expire this Friday. If you're not an options trader, the 50 put gives you the right to sell, both hands out like this, gives you the right to sell at 50. Well, at $46 a share, it's worth at least $4, the differential between where you have the right to sell it and where it falls to. Well, you know what else, Pete? They traded all the way up to $5.60. So you know how I love to wear my 10X hat? I almost had to have a 20X hat today, Pete, because these were bought yesterday, as you saw on the screen a moment ago, for 18 cents.
Yep.
And they went to $5.60. Do a little math, and then you'll see why I needed that 20X hat.
It's an unbelievable reaction, John, that we're seeing. The news story is probably not something that should be totally surprising. I am a little bit surprised on just the violent move that the stock made. When I saw those puts getting bought yesterday, I thought, gosh, it's a short period of time. Is this really going to work? I mean, we're talking about the 50 puts, the stock's trading in the 61 area, something like that. Well, they didn't just work. They worked about as good as you could possibly get when you're looking for options. Absolutely an explosive move. You know, the unregistered broker and all the different things the SEC is frustrated with and has absolutely hammered this company. But it's gotten a little bit of a, I don't know, John, it found a pause down there at 46 and then started to kind of make its way back up and over 40. That's where discipline always steps in. You
over 50.
Talk about it all the time. Yeah, over 50. I'm sorry. And I got to tell you, that's where the discipline comes into play. When you get a move like that, you've got to at least react. And after you've reacted, then you can make decisions after that. But if you didn't, you know what? Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. That's a major issue. But an unbelievable day today so far for Coinbase and Bitcoin.
Yeah. And, you know, thank goodness for people that maybe saw that coming, Pete. Yeah. I don't know if the SEC chair could trade against that information, but somebody might have known that was coming. And they bought puts at 18 cents that went to $5.60, and it traded a ton of stock. All right, we went over pretty far on time on that one, Pete, but I thought it was worth it because of what it implied. Let's talk about GitHub, because this one, half the loss that the street expected, beat on revenue, so that's beat on top line, bottom line, guided higher, and their CEO and co-founder said, we will deliver more AI-powered capabilities to customers than any other DevOps platform. If you say that, that's virtually the same sort of thing that NVIDIA said about their chips, Pete. Different, but still on the AI train. I love this. Stock was up 20, 25. Now it's up 30%, 15 million shares versus 2 million normal.
And in this case, John, you're seeing some squeeze going on here. There's about a 12% short interest in the stock. That's helping this move advance even faster to the upside, like you were just describing. Developer software, that's what they're talking about. And as you just said, the CEO's big thing was, hey, we are going to be the leader in AI in this specific category. Well, all you've got to do is mention AI these days and stocks will move. It's absolutely incredible what's going on. But they've even got the organic growth, John, from a revenue perspective, that was projected to be 45%. So this is a company that's rolling. And I wouldn't want to be one of those shorts. I wouldn't want to be a short that's coming in now either, because it seems to me like there might be still some momentum. I think this is one where if you missed it, you either need to buy a call or just stay away for now and see if we get any kind of a pullback into the near future.
Yep. And keep in mind what our buddy AJ always says, Pete, AJ Monty, I'm talking about, because AJ is one of the best technicians we know, and we're lucky to have him working with us. He always says you break through a level, you almost always reverse back down under that level at least once in the coming days. And just like it happened in the case of NVIDIA, you buy it on that second drop rather than chasing it today. Pete's advice is absolutely great. All right, let's talk about NVCR, Pete, because this one, we all root for the companies that are doing things to make people's lives better. And, for a tumor treating, which is what they do for non-small cell lung cancer, that's a godsend for people that need it. Well, the news wasn't quite as good as people had hoped over with the FDA and this phase 3 trial. And for that reason, this one, boom, 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 to the downside, Pete.
Yeah, 52-week lows, absolutely got hammered, John. It's down. Last I looked, it was somewhere close to 30 or 31% to the downside. There was a lot of critics about how the whole thing was structured and what happened and everything. And, they do have a great balance sheet. They are working, as you said, in a very important area. I mean, we all should be hoping that all of these different companies that are out there in the medical world can get to some of these areas and make our lives a little bit better. In this case, they're just saying that, there's some things that are going on here that look okay, but they maybe aren't quite as great. Matter of fact, one of the guys got mad because they used the word profound. And he said, I'm not sure that's the best way to describe this name because of how they're doing. They're doing things okay, but it doesn't hold up to some of the standards that they normally would be using, John, or that they've shifted to be using. And that's the issue here. Stock's getting absolutely hammered. I wouldn't try to buy this one. A lot of people say, what? It's time. It's time. You know what? Sometimes it takes days for these things to bottom out. I don't think you want to do something like that right now, but they do have a good balance sheet. They've got the money. I think that this is a company that you want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I agree. And if you're somebody who, would be like the people on TV that always say, well, yeah, I like it, but I like it, $5 lower than this. Remember, there's always strategies you could do to actually trade on that. You could be selling a $5 out of the money put because the stock has lost 50% of its value this year. All right. How about this one, Pete? Sienna. Sienna reports non-GAAP gross profit margin that was better than expected by a little. They reported top line numbers that were better than expected, bottom line numbers that were better than expected. So why is it down 12%, Pete? Well, they guided for the second half of the year not being nearly as good. I will say this, though. The November lows, Pete, were right around where the stock got to today. So this is one that I would be looking to maybe do a little nibbling in. How about you?
Yeah, we think the same way. We always have. We always probably will. But I'm looking at this one, and for all the right reasons, what you just pointed out, John, when your earnings go up 48% year over year, your revenue goes up 19% year over year, but your concern is the big web scale firms not being as involved. I'm not sure I'd be as concerned about that as obviously folks are today. So with that being said, it's an inexpensive stock, gives you great opportunity. The stock has given you a 10% discount. I'd be looking at this one pretty close, John, and I might even be looking from a stock perspective as opposed to the options, because this is a name that competes with the big boys. They do a pretty decent job normally, but this one concern is something that you better be aware of, because that is the reason for the sell-off that we're seeing, in my opinion. I like the stock, though, John. I think it's gotten a little too cheap.
I agree. And like I said, I think I will be owning this one, Pete. I've bought it small today, and my intention is that if we do break 40, which we haven't yet, I would definitely be putting on a bigger position, but I would give it 3 months into the future. I wouldn't be trading for this week for a short-term bounce.
Mhm.
All right, Pete, what do you got for us in terms of sports today?
Well, free agency still exists. People all think it ends. It's like a 1 month thing. Hey, February, everybody's signing. They're going from here to there. Jimmy Garoppolo gets this huge contract. We already talked about Jimmy's contract and the leg issue and everything else. And, it gets pretty interesting. There still are free agents out there, John. And this shouldn't surprise anybody who knows a little bit more about football, which is most of the guys that are left, and there are some big names out there, are 30 plus years old, which is why I think these teams have kind of waited. And one of them is a guy who used to be a Chicago Bear, John. I think it was either the 9th or the 10th pick in the draft when he came out in 2016. But Leonard Floyd is a heck of a defensive end. You know who he used to play with when he was out in LA? Well, there was a big guy named Von Miller who was the other side. Those two guys are getting paired up again, John, up in Buffalo. So he's one of those big names that finally found a landing spot. $7 million guaranteed. He could go up to $8 million. So it's not a huge ticket item for a guy who's getting a little bit older. It's a pretty nice contract, so I'm sure he's pretty happy about it. But it's nothing compared to some of these contracts you and I have talked about, and it's unbelievable. So the next one that I just wanted to throw out to you, John, where does DeAndre Hopkins go? He's a 31-year-old receiver, right? He's a total stud. Everybody likes him. He's not a bad guy. He's not a bad guy in the locker room or any of those things, but he wants to play with a quarterback, and which says something about Arizona right now. But he wants to play with a quarterback. So his teams that he's looking at he wants to go with Josh Allen in Buffalo. That wouldn't be a bad one for him. He'd love to play with him. Dallas, he could be there, but they got so much money right now, John, already, and CeeDee Lamb is one guy who's going to get a huge payday. You've got Cooks. You've got other guys. I don't know that he fits in there very well. How about the Jets with Aaron Rodgers? Could they make that work somehow? He'd love to play with Aaron Rodgers if Rodgers is going to play 2-3 more years. Or maybe Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, John. What if they gave him a nice wide receiver? Where do you think he ends up? It could be a different team altogether, but where do you think he ends up? Because we're talking about one of the very best receivers in the NFL right now.
Well, it would just be total speculation on my part where he could end up, Pete. I agree with you that Dallas would love to have him, but sort of a little overextended in several areas.
Yeah.
I thought this one, when you mentioned that you wanted to talk about free agency, I thought this one was interesting too. He's not available anymore, but the 49ers have this guy, Mike McGlinchey, and he's a Notre Damer, a Gold Domer. And so you and I know a lot of those guys because of our experience in Chicago with Jeff Kilberg and a whole bunch of those other guys. Chris, that basically made Montana's college career in that game in the Cotton Bowl. With some unbelievable catch and things like that. All you young guys don't even know about this stuff. But Mike McGlinchey, he's a 6'8", 315-pound O-lineman. Left San Francisco. He was one of those free agents, and now he's over there at Denver. And he had been fairly vocal, Pete, about not really being a big fan of Russell Wilson. So we'll have to see. He's bullish on the O-line that they've put together. So I guess that sort of says, well, don't blame us, Russ, if you can't get the job done.
Yeah, and they sealed that offensive line for him. He has no excuses, John. They gave McGlinchey, offensive lineman only got $87 million. I mean, holy smokes, football has – and you know what, McGlinchey, write a nice check and send a meal over to Lawrence Taylor because he's the reason you're getting the money you're getting. All these offensive linemen should remember that because Lawrence Taylor – changed the game of football for the rest of all of our lives. And it's been going on now for quite some time. All right, John, this news broke this morning. It's very interesting because
it was our friend that broke it.
Yeah,
our friend over at Fox.
Susan Lee did a great job. She's a wonderful lady. She does a lot of different things with, she's the gal who's in the tech world with Apple and this and with that and everything else. But clearly she likes a little bit of golf because she was the first person, it seemed like for me anyway, she broke it. So it's an amazing thing though, John, because the LIVs and the PGA, not exactly friends. As a matter of fact, even some of the golfers, they've said a lot of things about each other over the last, 2 years probably, John. It's something that I think is really interesting. They made this merger, they made it happen, and I think the PGA kind of felt like they had to make it happen because the LIV Tour is getting a little bit better. There's a lot of their golf is played in the United States anyway. There's a lot of different reasons why. You've got some of that crossover anyway, John, because if you had won a tournament, you can play in that tournament. All the different things that the pros that know golf inside and out understand that very well. But I don't know, John. It's really interesting because I think Jay Monahan really had to sort of sit back and make this decision, and a very difficult thing for him to do because there was a lot of hatred, a lot of vitriol, a lot of everything going on here. And it seems like they've had to say, we're going to make this deal. And they made that deal. And is it going to be something that you think works with the Saudis, that they're jumping away from here? Because, John, we all know one thing. They didn't make much money on this. Matter of fact, they probably blew a hell of a lot of money on this. Maybe the $2 billion they put out there with all the cash prizes and everything. And I think the Saudis are looking at soccer. And if you look at the money they're giving out to Messi, if he actually signs, and Ronaldo, who already is there, $1 billion for 2 years for Messi, that doesn't seem like such a bad contract, right?
Well, the people who should be angry, Pete, are the people at the PGA, the other rank and file players, Rory McIlroy and some of these guys who said, there's no effing way I'd go over there and play with those guys, and blah, blah, blah. But, he passed up $500 million. Tiger allegedly passed up $1 billion. Now, we all know that your integrity is worth something. So I'm certainly not making fun of those guys, but I am saying that if you had even an inkling that this might happen, this is something that really would stick in my craw. If I were Rory, if I were Tiger, I'd be, granted, neither of those two guys need the money. We both get it, but it's not up to me to spend their money. Right. So if you're told by the PGA, no, you can't take that. If you do, we'll ban you. The only things you'll be able to play in are like the Masters, which it gets to invite its own group, Pete. I think the Open, both our Open and the Open, the British Open, now they just call it the Open. I would be pissed. I would really be pissed because maybe I walked away from 50 mil and I'm a guy that, that really would be life-changing money, if I'm that player. So I think this is something that there won't be a lot of, backslapping and happiness because of this, because the other guys will be like, yeah, I kind of stuck them hard. How'd you do?
Yeah.
In your whole career, you'll never make what I made last year.
The one good thing for those guys that did come out of this, though, John, was the PGA had to start elevating the prices for the purse, right? I mean, it really did become something where they didn't get as competitive. I mean, they weren't going toe-to-toe with the Saudis, but they did raise those levels, and so guys were making a little bit more money. But, yeah, Mickelson and Norman and these guys, just amazing that this has happened so quickly as well, John. So that I think is another piece to the puzzle as well. So it's not like this was a decade ago, and this is nothing to do at all like with the NFL and the AFL and those kinds of things. Those were different. AFL needed something. These guys, they had the money, everything was there, but they finally came together, and it's going to be very interesting how we see the dynamic of golf, I think, over the next – it'll probably go away, but I think it'll take a little bit of time, John, probably 3 or 4 tours, and maybe they'll start to be back to normal and having their cocktails afterwards together.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're in Formula One, they're in boxing. You mentioned soccer. The kingdom is definitely very active with that sovereign wealth fund, Pete.
Yeah.
Remember, folks, if you go for marketrebellion.com/BOGO, you get a BOGO. If you go for marketrebellion.com/bang, you get a BOGO, a buy one, get one free of one of our services that will be the sort of thing that we talked about with Coinbase today. So if you always wanted to check it out, marketrebellion.com/bang. And with that said, Pete and I'll see you tomorrow. I'll still be in LA. Pete will probably be working his way out to Napa, which I will be doing too, Pete, tomorrow night on the jet because I stole it from you.
You bastard. Have a good one, man.
You
See
too.
ya.